But brother
That's
Bermuda.
what the most important part is of the Bible.
So, brother Bermuda, but because the first step we have to do is to establish is this a book from the divine before you believe in it, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
It
But doesn't the
doesn't
Quran
make the claim. It doesn't make the claim. It's not agreed upon what it is. It's demonstrably not preserved. It's internally inconsistent. It's externally inconsistent. It's got ambiguity in monotheism and historically inaccurate. At what stage do I start caring about what its message is? Okay, Jazakallah khair for giving me the question. So just to clarify, so you want to know why would I think that the Quran is from God, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a few ways of approaching this. So the first thing to do is you have the book itself. Does it make the claim? The first step to establish is, does the text claim that it's something divine? Yeah. Now, so we're going to try and do this as a contrast between the Bible and the Quran. We have to. So, does the book, first of all, the text that you have, without doing anything else with it, does it make the claim that it's from God? Quran, yes, there are many verses that do this. This is a revelation from God. You can find this throughout the Quran. Does the Bible make the claim? Does the New Testament make the claim that this book is from God? Anywhere? Do any of the people that are writing it make the claim that this is divine? These are divine words? You can do that research for yourself. I would say no. Okay.
But isn't that circular reasoning?
No, there's no circles here. I've just done a comparison. Where's the circle? I haven't said this is the
only evidence. If you're saying that the Quran is from God because the Quran says so.
No, that's not what I've said.
Let me tell you what I thought he said. I thought he said the Quran is the word of God because it says it's the word of God.
No, that's not what I said. So let me clarify. Why don't I look at Harry Potter and try and ascertain if this text is from God? Why don't I do? What's the reason I don't do that?
I guess because it doesn't say it's from God.
Because it doesn't make the claim. So all I'm talking about is establishing the very first step before you even start to look at the criteria for divinity in terms of authorship. You're going to see if the book is actually saying, test me on this. Is it making the claim I am written by a divine author? I've come from a divine author. So I will say to you that the Quran makes the claim that it's divinely inspired, or it's from the Creator. It's replete throughout the book. Yeah, I would say look at the New Testament or the Bible and see if you can come up with the same claim. So I'm just doing a comparison here. The second step for me now, I'm trying to now put myself outside of my Muslimness and trying to think about how I'm going to approach this. So the next step, I'm thinking, okay, so this book is claiming that it's from God. Do I have the book? So I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is something that was from God, but actually I don't have it now. It's not preserved. So the next step is, do I have the text as it was revealed? If this claim is made, do I have the text? Or am I dealing with something that has now been revised to the extent where I can't ascertain which bit of it might be divine and which might of it not be divine? And so that would be the second step. Now, when you look at the Quran, we've spoken very briefly about the methods of establishing its preservation. We have the order of transmission, which is sort of the prominent, the most sort of established way, and the what's the word I'm looking for, is the preeminent way in which it is preserved. But also we have manuscript evidence as well to back this up. So we have a dual mechanism of establishing the preservation, and we spoke about this earlier on. Now, when we look at the New Testament, and this is what we were doing with the New Testament streams that we were doing on EFdawh, and this is what this discussion is about today, we can establish that the text is not as it was in the beginning. I mean, I'll give you a very brief example. So, for example, the Muslims agree on what the Quran is. Just forget it. We're looking at it as on word for word, but we agree that this is the Quran. There is no disagreement amongst a Muslim that no, there's a chapter missing, there's a chapter to add. Someone's added the chapter that needs to be taken. There is none of this debacle amongst the Muslims. Now we have Christians, some Catholics who believe in 73 books. We have the Protestants with 66 books. If we go to the Eastern Orthodox Bibles, they differ in the number of books, not the words, number of books within their canon. So
okay, let me ask
amongst
you a question about
Christians,
that, actually.
so I'm just establishing the point. So I've no evidence so far. I'm just giving you the overarching. I'm giving you the framework on which I'm going to answer this question with. Now, if the Christians amongst themselves cannot agree what is the Bible, first of all, the first, that step, what am I even looking at to see if it's preserved? What am I looking at to read? Is it divine? So what we've got the claim. Is it preserved? Preservation requires first an agreement of what it is. Is there agreement of what it is? And then we can go into the preservation mechanisms. Okay. So three things I've given, 3 reasons why the Bible does not meet these criteria. So for me as a person approaching a religious text, and if that text happens to be the Bible, it's already fallen down. It doesn't even make the claim. There is no agreement on what the text is, and there's no preservation. So all 3 things have fallen down. I've not even got down to the words themselves yet, or the manuscripts themselves yet. Then you read the text. Then I would sit down and I would read through it. What is this book about? What is it saying? What is it? Is there anything within it that I can use as a way of ascertaining whether this is from God? So when you start reading the text, the first thing I would expect from a book that is from the divine is that it would be free of error. So this is just automatic. It's not going to say the sky is blue and then somewhere else says the sky is red. That wouldn't happen. This would be a contradiction. And if the individual who is God is authoring this, he wouldn't make these mistakes. So it would be free from error. In fact, the Quran specifically says within this book there will be no contradiction. Just specifically says that. Interesting, the word contradiction is only used that once in that one sentence. So so I would go through and compare the contradiction. Now, if you go through the Quran, people have tried for 1400 years to find the errors and they're unable to do that. If you were to go to the Bible, for example, just look at very simple things. If you look at the Gospel of John, there is the washing of the feet. There is no final meal. If you go to the 3 Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels, there's no washing of the feet. You have the Last Supper. If you look at the crucifixion, what day it was, what hour it was, how long did it last for? All of these things are not agreed, and these are supposedly eyewitness testimonies. If you looked at, say, something really famous, say a thing that's claimed to be the words of Jesus claiming to be divine, the I am statements. I'm the bread of life. I am the true vine. I am the, all the I am statements. 75% of the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, as attributed, they don't make any mention of these phenomenally important theological doctrines that people use. That these are claims of. They don't even mention them. This is like somebody wins £1 million, and no one records that they won £1 million, and apparently they witnessed the events around this winning of this £1 million. So what I'm already now, again, I haven't gone very deep now. I'm just looking at is it internally consistent? So we can demonstrate that the Bible is internally inconsistent. It doesn't even agree with itself about the narrative. It doesn't even agree with itself about the timeline of events, the words that are being used for the same episodes, even the something objective. So if you look at the words that were put above the head of Jesus on the cross, allegedly, this is an objective thing. Why? Because you can't look at it and say, I'm going to interpret it in this way. It's just words on a board, apparently. All 4 Gospels have different words for the words that were written there. All of them. So again, this is internally inconsistent. I try and apply that criteria to the Quran. I would ask you to do that. You're not going to see that. Then I would look at, then you flip this. Okay, is it externally consistent? Is it consistent with the world around as it would have been at the time? Or when it talks about phenomenology, so things happening in the world, is it consistent? And then what you'll find, actually, the Quran talks about things that are, natural phenomena in an amazing way. And I won't go into those because I don't want to make an argument from scientific miracles. This is not what I'm claiming. I'm talking about descriptions of natural phenomena in a way that cannot be attributed to the time. Okay, now you can do the same thing with the Bible. So now we're seeing how we're building this up. Does it make the claim? Is it preserved? Is it is there agreement on what the text is? Do we have internal contradictions, external contradictions? And then we come down to, is there anything within that text that asks you to, and this is where Brother Hamza's falsification test asks you to use to verify. So God has given us this faculty of reason and knowledge. And why? Because he's given us this reason, because we use this faculty to come closer to him. So we don't believe in a blind faith as Muslims. We believe in an affirmation. Iman is not faith without any boundaries. It's actually it's a confirmation, an affirmation of your knowledge that you've acquired. This is what our understanding of faith or Iman is. So we use this ration, we apply it to the text, the text. So, for example, the Quran says that if they could produce something like this, then they would not be able to do that. So it gives the challenge of trying to produce something like this in various forms in the Quran. So I would, as a non-Arab, I would say, well, what is this? What is it talking about? Is it talking about poetry? Is it talking about eloquence? No, the Quran is talking about something very objective. And if you look at any of the videos, particularly Brother Mansour covers this in a lot of detail. So we have this very interesting phenomena that you could not put. The Quran says that you could not produce something like this. So what do we mean by like this? There's different ways of looking at this. The text itself, or the way the text is produced. How is the text produced? An illiterate individual is given a text that is a masterpiece in its an era, and from that time onwards, that is unmatched in any way. Still, so you could be either thing. So what that could mean is that it's referring to the process. Why don't you find someone illiterate and get them to bring a masterpiece? Or it could say, actually, just bring the masterpiece. You can look at it either way. Obviously, the first one, no one's been able. There's been no other illiterate individual who's brought a text like the Quran. We know this. Look at the text itself. So what is it? What's special about the text from the linguistic perspective? So in a very brief way. So we're not talking about beauty, eloquence. These things are all part of that we would expect anyway, but that's not the criteria. So the criteria is the structure of the very language that's used. So I'm not going to go very deep into that. The Quran, the language of the Quran is such that the structure of the language, the way it's used, was something that was previously unknown to the Arabs and remains of the highest eloquence amongst the Arabs in terms of linguistic usage, and it became the foundation of the grammar for the people. It was really that level, that text, the level of the mastery and its position within that society was unimaginable. Okay, now I've given you a few things that now let me compare that to the Bible. Is there anything amongst it with that? No, we find grammatical errors. We find poor Greek or really good Greek, depending on which author it is. We find lots of these. We find partial translation of Aramaic sayings into Greek that don't really go very well, and it's a hash. We find a combination of Aramaic and Hebrew together, Greek together. So we find a lot of patchwork of talents being applied to the text. So that's another level. So that what have we gone through? We've gone through the fact that does it make the claim? Is it preserved? Is it agreed upon? We've gone through the internal consistency, external consistency. We've gone through the claims, falsification claims, as Brother Hamza mentioned, and now we've gone through the text itself being produced in a way that is miraculous, i.e., something that is still unparalleled to this time. What's the last thing and probably the most important thing? What is it calling you to? The worship of one God without any partners, and the consistency of that message through time. God is not saying he's ethnocentric. I did not give this monotheism only to these Jewish people, or only to X people or Y people. God is not ethnocentric. God is not racist. God is saying, I sent to every nation a messenger. What was the message? Worship God alone without partners. God is one. This is a very fundamental message. This resonates within, and this is where the faith aspect of it comes in. This resonates with me as an individual. So now when I sit down and read the Quran, I have all of these things now, and then I apply the historical story analysis. I can look at things like historical claims that are made within the text, and I can then see what's going on. Now, if I apply the monotheistic claim to the Bible, we have some ambiguities. The Father and I are one. We have these ambiguities about the beginning of the Word, and the words are with God, and the Word was God. We have Moses being referred to as Elohim. We have all of these ambiguities that can be understood and explained in a monotheistic way, but often is taken in the Trinitarian or a multiplicity of God's concept by the Christians. Now, the last thing I'm going to say to put the sort of the cherry on the cake is, if you look at the historical now, because we started this as the historicity discussion. So if you look at the historical statements made within the Quran, they are mind-blowingly accurate. I'll give you two, just two, okay? One where we can compare the Bible and the Quran, and one where the Bible we can't compare. So where can we compare the Bible and the Quran? Look at the mention of Pharaoh for the time of Joseph, and the mention of Pharaoh for the time of Moses. The Bible mentions Pharaoh for both of them. What does the Quran do? The Quran mentions king for the time of Joseph and Pharaoh for the time of Moses. Now we know from the sort of 1940s, etc., when we had access to enabling us to translate the hieroglyphs, the Rosetta Stone and other stelae that were used to make these translations, we know that the accurate thing to understand is that the term Pharaoh was applicable to the leader at the time of Moses. And before that time, it was a name of the house, and the individual within the house who ruled was the king. Now, this information was not available to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because it was only translated and available to us in the 1940s. The Bible, if you claim it was divine, then that author made a mistake. If you look at the Quran, spot on. Again, look at the process. An illiterate individual who brings a phenomenal text that's the masterpiece of his time and has been for this time onwards and is the grammatical basis of the language for that country, for that civilization from time onwards. One thing you can't compare. So there is a mention in the Quran of a city called the city of Iram. Now, this is a city that used to trade. This is a city that was unknown in history. We didn't have access to the information of this city. In fact, many of the Christians polemicists were actually using this fact as a claim against the Quran. Look, it talks about this city never existed. This is just completely made up. And then I think, I can't remember the exact date, but this again in the 19th century, the 18th, so the 20th century, that we discovered cuneiform text which speaks about a trade between two cities, and one of those cities was the city of Iram. Again, how was this information accessible to the individual who say the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who brought the text? So for me, you can see now I've layered my approach to the text as taking myself out of my Muslimness. I can come to that conclusion that this text is exactly what it claims to be, i.e. something from the divine. Every single step that I've mentioned, the Bible falls down on as a direct comparison. So that would be my answer. Apologies for it being slightly long, but that would be my approach to how I would come to that text.
And you didn't even touch upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
and I haven't even touched upon the character of the Prophet Muhammad.
And who could be the author?
Level, subhanallah. Yeah.
So, Bermuda, have you got any comments to make from the comprehensive answer that Dr. Imran has given, mashallah?
Well, it's quite a bit to respond to, honestly, but you did mention that there are 3 different Bibles in the world, right? Why would you say the most important message, though, does the Bible transmit?
What?
Which one?
Like, what would you say? Like the Bible. What's the most important message of the Bible? Salvation, right?
But you know, brother Bermuda,
that's what the most important part is of the Bible.
So, brother Bermuda, but you know, because the first step we have to do is to establish is this a book from the divine before you believe in it, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
It doesn't make the claim. It doesn't make the claim. It's not agreed upon what it is. It's demonstrably not preserved. It's internally inconsistent. It's externally inconsistent. It's got ambiguity in monotheism, and historically inaccurate. At what stage do I start caring about what its message is?